So can we start the program this morning? Dear Ms. Samantha Power, Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, Mr. Mark Knepper, U.S. Ambassador to Vietnam, Mr. Hunter Ruff, Mission Director of USAID Vietnam, Mrs. Susan Burns, U.S. Consul General in Ho Chi Minh City, distinguished guests from U.S. and USAID partner, our lecturer and student. It's an honor for us, lecturer and student of Cần Thơ University, to welcome Mr. Samantha Power and her delegates to our campus today. As you know, Cần Thơ University, located in the center of the Mekong Delta, Vietnam, it was founded in 1966. Our mission is to focus on training, conducting research, and transferring of technology to advance the sustainable of socio-economic development of the Mekong Delta and contributing to other regions of Vietnam as well. We have got approximately 1,900 staff members and more than 46,000 students. Almost of our students are from the Mekong Delta. So we would like to share some information about the collaboration and support from U.S. partner so far. We have sent 25 government officers in the Mekong Delta to obtain the postgraduate program in U.S. under the Mekong 1000 program. This program is funded by the local government. We have 150 staff and lecturers have been sent to U.S. for postgraduate and so-called training program. We would like to thank for the different scholarship and program that support by the U.S. partner. There have been 33 joint international projects with a total budget around $1 million have been implemented in by Cần Thơ University during the period from 2015 until now. Recently, we have 3 ongoing projects with more than $1,300. The remarkable achievement of the cooperation between Cần Thơ University and the U.S. partner are clearly shown through the following figure. Let me explain you. Firstly, the Delta Research and Global Observation Network in Mekong Institute, or we call Reagan Mekong Institute, established in 2008 for research and training on the impact of climate change on the major river delta to enhance the relation of the delta community and the ecosystem to the climate change. Second, the American handout in June 2018 with a full collection of updated material and resources about the U.S. And finally, the Market Innovation Space operated since April 2019, which is equipped with the modern equipment aiming to actualize new ideas and innovation of students and faculties of the university. On this occasion, Cần Thơ University would like to express our special thanks to the U.S. government, U.S. partner, especially the USAID, U.S. Embassy, U.S. Consulate General in Ho Chi Minh City for the efficiency support for Cần Thơ University so far. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is a strong effect in the Mekong Delta region, where we have about 17 million people are living. Every year, the Mekong Delta region produces more than 90% of rice and 70% of fishery products for export. Cần Thơ University actively collaborating with international and local partners to support provinces in the Delta that are affected by the climate change. It's an honor with pleasure to welcome Mrs. Samantha Power, the Administrator of USAID, to participate in our town hall talk session this morning about the climate change, particularly with our students who present the future of the Mekong Delta. The session will provide a valuable insight into the climate change and its impact on the Delta. viewed through the eyes of our students. We hope that the event will inspire our youth to identify solutions and address the issue, starting from the small but effective action that will have the significant impact on the long run. Mr. Matatan Power, on behalf of Cần Thơ University, I would like to thank too much for your visit in our campus and your time today with us. We wish you good health, happiness, success, and have very successful talk with our students today. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your welcome speech, Professor Phương, and dear Administrator Power, and the distinguished guests. To echo what Professor Phương just mentioned, it is our pleasure to welcome you to Cần Thơ University and to our gathering of students and young researchers who are passionate about the sustainable development of the Delta. We are honored to have you with us today, and we share your commitment to addressing challenges posed by climate change and other social, economic, and environmental challenges of the Delta. As you all know from different sources of information, there are many pressing challenges facing our regions and our world today. From climate change to economic development, there is much work to be done to build a brighter and more sustainable future for all. But with challenges come opportunities. We believe that by working together, we can make a real difference. The Dragon Mekong Institute at Cần Thơ University was established as a joint effort. I would like to mention about a joint effort between the U.S. and Vietnamese government to promote long-term sustainability of the Delta in facing climate change problems. This initiative was sparked by the vital roles played by both the Mekong Delta and the Mississippi Delta in food security and socio-economic development. Since then, a strong partnership has been forged between the United States Geological Survey, USGS, and Cần Thơ University in general, and the Dragon Mekong in more specific. And we are proud to have recently received a grant from the USAID Vietnam. Among others, of course, we also received some other sources of funds from elsewhere. But one of the grants we received from USAID Vietnam is to build a network of young people dedicated to addressing climate issues. And this is one of the very key topics we are discussing today, and with the youngster, the future of the Delta. We are grateful for Administrator Power's leadership and vision. We share your commitment to addressing the Earth's issue facing the Mekong Delta and the wider world. Through our collective efforts, we can invest in higher education to spur continued inclusive economic growth, to support a strong, prosperous, and resilient Mekong Delta. So once again, thank you very much for your visit today, Administrator Power and the delegation. And the distinguished guests, professors, and students of Cần Thơ University. The panel today will include the three very bright faces over here. We have Administrator Power. He is the current administrator of the United States Agency for International Development since April 2021. She is renowned scholar, author, and diplomat, having served as a U.S. ambassador to the United States nations during the Obama admission. As the USAID Administrator, Ms. Power committed to advancing the ANC mission of promoting sustainable development and ending extreme poverty globally. And next we have the lady sitting here, Lương Ngọc Bích, is the first year finance and banking student at our university. She has grown up in Cần Thơ city and seen effects of water resource changes separated by climate change. During her conversation with the administrator today, Wing expressed her eagerness to learn about the global solutions and explore opportunities to apply them in the Mekong to protect local communities. And then next to that, we have Nguyễn Thế Nhật, born and raised in Hậu Giang province. He is the third year student majoring in English studies, hoping to become the bilingual MC, an environmental activist, and an English teacher. He recognized that climate change really impacts his family life and has ripple effects on various aspects of life, especially of the young generation of the Delta. So the program of today will run as the following. First, I would like to invite the Administrator Power to provide a personal remark on whatever you have experienced here so far. And then I would like to invite Wing and Nhật to share their personal perspective on climate change in the Delta. After that, the Administrator Power may have questions. The question and answer section will go after that, and until about 11. And after 11, the floor is open to every one of you here. So please feel free to ask questions. Yeah. And after that, we will have a closing remark by about 25 past 11. And we end the session by half past session. And thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it is a true pleasure to be here in Vietnam, to be here in the Mekong Delta region, which I have read so much about over my life, and to finally be here and have a sense of it, and especially to be here at Canto University. I'm absolutely thrilled and can't wait to not be talking and to be listening and hearing about what's on your mind. I was asked to just share, my impressions so far. So let me tell you a little bit about my trip to Vietnam so far, which is 3 days old, maybe 4 days old. So like every American who visits, I think I know everything about Vietnam after 3 days. But I started in Ho Chi Minh City and got to be part with our ambassador, who you know, got to be part of turning over a large piece of land that had been polluted by dioxin probably from Agent Orange, which the United States had used in the war here. And we take very seriously, as the United States, our responsibility for a lot of aspects of the war that continue to have effects on the lives of the Vietnamese people today. For example, missing soldiers, missing civilians, doing DNA analysis so that they can be found and their remains returned to their families. Sometimes a mother is still hanging on and waiting to know, to be reunited in a sense with their lost child. We take very seriously, for example, Agent Orange and the way that it has affected land and water and health here in this country. So it was a really moving experience for me to be a part of having had USAID in a sense, take over the process or fund the process of cleaning up the land. And now what I got to see was the land that had been so polluted and so dangerous become now a very beautiful park. And so we planted some trees in this park. And we need to do that in many more parts of the country where this issue persists. So that was very powerful for me because, of course, every American child or student grows up reading about the Vietnam War and, of course, all of the challenges associated with that. But also now young Americans get to read about the friendship with the Vietnamese people, and particularly with young people. And education, of course, as was said, has been a huge piece of building this new friendship between our two peoples, because young people like you are such incredible ambassadors for Vietnam who come to the United States and show the brilliance and the creativity and the warmth and the cooking of Vietnam, and so this is a wonderful aspect of our relationship, is these educational exchanges, and of course we want to see more Americans also traveling to Vietnam as students and as tourists as well. I also had the chance in Ho Chi Minh City to meet with a female entrepreneur who devised an app in order to help deal with, for example, plastic pollution. We all know that the Mekong and the oceans are getting spoiled by, plastic bottles that go out. They harm the fish. They harm nature in a profound way. And so a young woman had devised an app that allows citizens to, in a sense, call or summon a collection of materials that are recyclable, and not only plastic, also cardboard and other recyclable materials. And of course that citizen can get paid for their recycled material, and citizens have volunteered to be waste collectors. So they are the ones who see on their phones, oh, somebody is interested in having their plastic picked up. So these women get to earn money by going and taking a tractor or a trolley and going and collecting the recycling material. The waste collectors pay the citizen, then the waste collector brings it to the recycling facility, and the plastic doesn't pollute. Everybody earns a little more money than they otherwise would have, and we have helped the environment. And so what USAID is trying to do is make people aware that such an app exists, because even you probably, who care so much about the environment, sometimes it's just hard to recycle. It's just too far or too burdensome. And if we can make everything that is good for the environment simpler, easier, then you will see more citizens being part of a larger environmental movement. Coming here to this part of the country is incredible. Mainly I've been meeting with farmers of different kinds of fruits, or of course rice farmers. And what I've heard from every farmer I've talked with over the last couple days is a question, which is, should we continue to do what we have done for hundreds of years in our families? Or because of the changed environment, do we have to change everything? Do we have to tell our children not to become farmers at all? Do we, if we have raised freshwater fish because of the salt in the water in the Mekong, are those fish now going to die off, and do we have to instead think about something else, like maybe ecotourism? If we have farmed rice for decade after decade after decade in our families, given that the rains are so unpredictable, are we now better off maybe doing oranges or lemons or again, maybe not farming at all, and thinking about our kids going into a different line of work, maybe something more in industry. And so, you know, what I'm here to engage with you on is on the absolutely critical role that you have to play in shaping Vietnam's environmental future and preserving the beauty and the history and the majesty of this incredible country. And a lot of focus has been on renewables. I've also visited a garment factory where we had worked with folks at the factory to put in solar panels, and now the factory gives 50% of the electricity that it generates back to the government, back to the grid, which is great. And, you know, we know in 10 years that Vietnam now is 25% solar powered. Probably, you know, that is just going to continue. It's going to be a country of renewables. And so the green economy, we at USAID want to support you and to help you go into those lines of work and benefit from your expertise in making those technologies cheaper. But we can't only think about bringing down emissions, because we know climate change is already here. And this changed environment is already here. And so that is why helping individuals and communities adapt to this changing weather that so many communities are already grappling with. And that's, again, where USAID now, over the next decade, is really going to be growing our programming and our partnership with the communities that you came from, the communities you grew up in, the people you know, with you, in figuring out how can we help guard against the rains, give farmers technology so maybe they can know what those weather patterns are going to be like in advance, use fertilizer much more efficiently, bring down emissions associated with agriculture, find nature-based solutions. You know what the toolkit looks like. It's not a perfect toolkit, but we feel a responsibility as a very large emitting country that has put so much carbon out into the atmosphere to support those communities that are paying a price from too much carbon in the atmosphere. So that's what my trip has been like. The highlight is definitely when I get to talk to young people, so I couldn't be more excited to be here. And let me just say one thing for when we open it up for questions. We will talk, I know more about climate and the environment, but if you want to ask about anything else, it is totally okay to ask about other things as well. So I'm here and so eager to hear what's on your mind. And so please don't be shy about asking any question that you have for me, and I have this privilege of running USAID, which is this agency that supports health programming, agriculture, clean energy, education. And I get to work every day with President Biden and with people like John Kerry and others who you may know who care so much about Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. I really love it. So the next part is going to be my part and my speech. Again, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Lương Ngọc Bích Uyên, and I'm currently studying in finance and banking. A year ago, I don't think that I'm going to be here because I'm not a fan of climate change, and I don't think it was my responsibility. However, I listened to some speeches, especially ones from Greta Thunberg, and I changed my mind. I think that I should look into the life of the other people to understand. And the first thing that I look at is my neighborhood, the market there. So the sellers in my neighborhood, they never actually stop. Even in very severe weather or maybe floods, they never stop. They continue to put their goods on higher ground, and they will stay in the water for hours. The thing here is, the effort that they are paying is not that good. And I believe that they have, and also the cost of their price is going to be lower as the thing continues. Especially when the period of time of the flus is unstable, unlike it did in the past. So I'm really concerned and I'm really worried about this matter. I see my family in the future, and I'm scared that they are going to have to struggle to earn a living if this continues in the next 10 years. So what can I do in this situation? I want to solve this, and I need help, especially from fields like science and technology. I try to find partners, but it's quite hard because the number of women in this kind of field is not that much. And I couldn't find connection with the other as well. So I found this project, and I want to be here so that I can express my opinions, and I'm also here to seek help from the others so that we can solve this problem together. Thank you. So, Ms. Power, I also have a question for you. There are lots of people like me a year ago who did not actually acknowledge the circumstance. So what can we do to truly raise awareness about these problems?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. I think in my career, I've always been really interested in what I call the conversion moment. You know, when someone goes from being maybe on the sidelines or focused on other things, and then suddenly something causes them to decide that someone else's problem or a community's problem or a country's problem or a world's problem is suddenly their problem. And it's a beautiful thing when that happens, because it means we now can count on you being part of the solution and doing everything you can in your life, whether in your career or just, you know, as a citizen to try to make things better. And that's a wonderful thing when that happens. I think, unfortunately, because the effects of climate change are no longer something that scientists are warning about, but the effects of climate change are what citizens are seeing and living and enduring, as you said, in, you know, having to sell their goods at higher and higher altitude, or, you know, I went to a floating market this morning, and, you know, I gather if I had come even 2 years ago, I would have seen houses right along the bank of the Mekong, but now I saw cranes and construction equipment because people are building seawalls in order to try to prevent the flooding, you know, when the tide comes in, the flooding from going into the city of Kanto, which I know it now does a lot. So there's no way to think that climate change is something happening in the future or something happening over there. It is now, and it is here. And so I actually think the issue is no longer how can we make people see what is happening. Again, unfortunately, you can't miss it. I think the issue is it is so overwhelming that it depresses people. It just makes them really sad. And when you're really sad, you can feel immobilized, like you can't move, because you think, how do I even make, you know, how do I deal with something that's so big? And here I would share something that my former boss, Barack Obama, used to say to me a lot when I was ambassador to the United Nations and working with him every day. He would say, I know you want to solve the whole problem, Samantha, but just shrink the change. Shrink the change. Figure out what is the piece of change that you can make? And then he would say, because I have news for you, better is good. Better is good. And so the best is no climate change, right? The best is, you get to have the predictable weather patterns that you had 15 years ago, 20 years ago. The best is no flooding. Well, we may not be able to get the best, and if we think that we have to fix everything to do anything, then we often don't start. And so I think for young people this is, I haven't met Greta, but if I met her, this is the kind of exchange we would have, because it is really hard to get people to change their habits. For example, to go green or to recycle, or even as a student to focus maybe not on starting your own business, but on using your science degree to help farmers adapt. Change is hard, but if we think we have to solve the whole problem to start, then that will make it hard to convince people, to work. And so our job also is to work together to communicate when good things do happen. When having an app on your phone made it possible to predict when the rains were coming sooner, so you were able to adjust the harvesting schedule because you had that advanced meteorological evidence. When government does the right thing and puts in place a regulation to encourage recycling, that's a good thing. And so sometimes, again, you have to accept that the change you make isn't the full change, but if together each of you is making some small change, that is where we will begin to really improve what your generation, the world that your generation is living in.
Thank you. I really love your answer. So there is also a friend who would love to share his experience, and I believe you would love it.
Is that the friend?
Yes. Because you might know that his area is seriously damaged because of this. And can you continue?
Thank you, Ying, and good morning, Miss Samantha Power, and good morning, everyone. My name is Nguyễn Thanh Nhất, and being born and raised in Hậu Giang province, one of the 13 provinces in Mekong Delta, I realized that the climate change is affecting my hometown, my area, and even my family severely every single day. First, this is the unusual weather. Like the frequency of raining during the dry season is increasing dramatically, and it leads to the factors and the platform for many other problems. For example, these are the factors for many like diseases or insects attacking my rice paddy field severely. Moreover, my family members, such as my younger sister or my grandmother, are easily exposed to like fever or cold during these continuously rainy days. Unfortunately, more importantly and more severely, as everyone knows that my hometown in particular, as well as Mekong Delta in general, is well known for like fresh water and nutritious land. However, recently, the salt water intrusion is affecting even my hometown severely, and it leads to the fact that a lot of like rice paddy fields or even orchards could not live in the changing environment like this one, and a lot of money has been poured to find the substances, the equipment, or the methods to address this problem. However, it does not work because they do not have any pieces of experience to address like the salt water intrusion before. And my mom, like the breadwinner in my family, have decided to stop her agricultural activity, and then she decided to move to Bình Dương City, its neighbor with Ho Chi Minh City, to work as a security officer to earn money for my family. And at that time, I was just about 17, and I'm about to take the entrance exam at BdhuKH University. And I realized that it was so important examination for me. However, I have to accept it that I have to live with my younger sister alone in my hometown for her to have a chance to earn more money to support my family, like financial issues. And I think that it's time for us, especially the youngsters, the youth, especially in Mekong Delta, to take actions and to be the leaders to address this problem and to save the Mekong Delta again. Thank you. And I also have one question for you. This is, do we have or can we suggest any ways or solutions to ease or to reduce the inequality in terms of education opportunity for children in this remote or economically disadvantaged area like my hometown, because they are tend to be encouraged to stop their education at the very early stage of their life, such as just 13 or 12 years old, and their families wish them to become a blue collar at this age, and they have to end the education.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, again, thank you for sharing a very vivid and devastating story, but a very fitting example of people having to change their livelihoods because of the environmental damage. And your mother sounds amazing, and she must be to have raised you, and you must have been an incredible mentor to your younger sister, I bet. But it just really brings home how disruptive these effects are on traditional family structures. There's, your story is, as you know, not at all unique. The amount of migration that is happening either to get on dry land or high land, or for purposes of getting employment, this is happening all around the world. I guess I'd say you asked specifically about education, so I'll come back to that. But, I do think that one of the things that you have as young people that maybe your parents' generation didn't have is you are children who are very in touch with the world. And so, Vietnam doesn't have to be the first to learn about salination and the effect of salination on freshwater fishing. Other countries, even in the United States, are grappling with very similar challenges. You need not be the first to learn also about migration that occurs because of climate change and how government and public policy can adapt to be sure that social services accommodate not only people like your mother who are coming into a city for the first time, but the risks of that, because there are great risks for migrants who come to cities who don't have their traditional family networks around them, but also what kind of support do you and your sister get if your mother is forced to make a choice of that nature. And so, there is a lot of learning, and there are a lot of communities around the world who are going through exactly what you are going through. And I will say, because this is, a very difficult topic and in its way a very sad topic, but, when you think about what the Vietnamese people, what your parents and your grandparents have gone through in terms of conflict, in terms of food insecurity or even famine, hunger, and look at Vietnam today. Look at what you have come through and the strength of the people of this country. It is really, almost unique in the world for a country to have come so far so quickly. So this is a very difficult time because it is a time of transition. But if there is any people on the earth who are capable of facing challenges of this gravity, it is the Vietnamese people. Because you have already shown you can endure so much and spring back and look out for each other. There's a community solidarity that is extremely formidable. When you put your mind to something as a society, you, including educating young people, for example, in STEM, watch out. And we see that as the United States, as your friends and your partners. And we as USAID, we want to support you when you have an idea with maybe a little bit of, catalytic resources or maybe some scholarship support or this or that. But it is the Vietnamese people who are doing the work and coming up with these creative solutions that will get you through this very difficult transitional period. On education, I would say, there can be, depending on the circumstances, a role for players like USAID in terms of educational support to underdeveloped areas. But also, and I'm going to Hanoi later today, and we will have government meetings, including with the Prime Minister. But it's also really important that there be equitable investment of resources across every country in the world, and Vietnam is no exception. And so, I know the temptation among superstar, bright young people like you is maybe to invent an app or have a startup or work as an engineer or as a computer scientist and use this incredible education. But I do hope that some of you as well will consider going into government. Because, ultimately, even if, everybody in government looks like they're from, a long time ago and, they don't know as much about science and technology as you do, and they don't understand social media like you do, if you bring your creativity and your youth and your personal experience of these challenges and how they're affecting your communities into politics, into governmental policy making, then you also have the chance, for example, to argue from within the system that resources should be properly invested in those communities that are paying the greatest price from environmental damage and climate change.
Thank you very much.
So I believe that we should give a clap. Okay, so I think that our conversation was really good, but the audience, my schoolmates also have wonderful questions awaiting for you. And from now on, I would like to use Vietnamese so that everyone can understand better. Các bạn ơi, hỏi câu hỏi được rồi đó mọi người, hỏi thôi. Rồi, mời bạn. Xin mời bạn giới thiệu bản thân mình trước.
Greetings, Administrator Power. My name is Uyên, coming from College of IT. So, as an IT student myself, I noticed that the number of female students in my college has gradually increased. However, there aren't many girls who are really interested in the STEM or whatever related to technology. So I was wondering, how can I inspire or encourage more girls to study about STEM, and how can I start implementing this idea? Thank you.
That's great. Well, first, I don't know if there's a great Vietnamese word for mentor, right? When you have somebody that you look up to and somebody you want to be like. When I was a young person, I always imagined like a mentor was somebody much, much older and very wise and very experienced. And then I realized you can have a mentor who's a peer, who's your girlfriend or maybe is 1 year older than you in the university. And you are already a mentor potentially, to people who you went to high school with, to your nieces, to your nephews as well, right? Because it's not only about inspiring girls to think that they can do as you are doing, but it is also, being firm with the boys that you belong and showing boys as well what you can do. So, there's not some magic moment where you become old and gray and become a mentor. You are a leader now. Everything you do is something that someone is watching. And I think that's really important to remember. The other thing I would say in my experience, because in the United States, the area of national security, which I work in, it's maybe not quite as difficult as STEM, but for many, many years there were not a lot of women in American foreign policy or in national security. It's not crazy small numbers, but way fewer. So when I worked at the White House with Barack Obama, there's the senior staff, there may be 35 kind of senior advisors to President Obama. At one point, there were only 4 or 5 were women. And when you find yourself in that circumstance, which you will, if you go off and you're working for a company, you'll look around, you'll say, where'd all the women go? Remember at Canto, there were all these women, and it will change as you go out in the world. But you can find great strength as a group. And sometimes you're so busy and want to show what you can do that we miss opportunities to really focus on the network that we are a part of without even knowing it. And so what we did when I was working at the White House is we created something called the Wednesday Club. And so the world would be falling apart. We had national security crises. We were wanted in the Situation Room. But for 1 hour each week, the 4 of us at one point, and then later the 5 of us, would come together and we would meet for 1 hour. And we would just say, how are you doing? And nobody asks that question at the White House because it's more, what are you working on? Complaining about this or celebrating that, but to just ask, how's it going? How are you doing? 1 hour a week. And that really gives you a strength, to get past if you feel that people are looking past you or maybe discriminating against you in some way. If you have that sisterhood, it can help you get through a lot.
Thank you for your answer. So, is anyone here? Yes. Can you please? You can ask in Vietnamese if you want.
Okay. So, good morning, Miss Samantha Power, and good morning, everyone coming here today. First of all, I would say that it's really an honor for me to be here and meet you, and thank you so much for your interesting talk with us today. So now is my question. My question is about zero plastic lifestyle. Last week I watched a video, a TED Talk video of a girl talking about her new lifestyle, which is called zero plastic. It means that she replaces everything with everything in plastic by something else, some other materials, right? And even some stops in her daily life, for example, toothbrush or a cup. Okay. So, however, plastic plays a very important role in our life. It appears everywhere, and it seems that we cannot live without plastic. So, do you think that the zero plastic lifestyle is possible for us to follow? For example, the young, especially the young. And I would ask you, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this lifestyle? Yeah. And thank you in advance. I wish you good health and success.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to make sure we get a good few questions, so maybe after my attempt at a response, we will maybe take a few different questions. So get your questions or your comments in your minds. It's a great question. I mean, first I would come back to these great words from Barack Obama, better is good. So I think sometimes if people say, I'm going to go right to zero plastic, then they try, it's impossible, and then they give up. And then they don't even recycle. So we want to make sure that we get on a path where we can deal with the emissions caused by plastic manufacturing and plastic pollution, and the pollution and the environmental damage caused by not sufficiently recycling these materials. And so as USAID and other countries are a part of an effort to replace plastic where we can. And that means working with governments to change their laws. So, in many parts of the United States, plastic straws are no longer allowed. In many parts of the United States, you can't get a plastic bag at the supermarket without paying 5 cents for it, which is very small money, but it makes people think, oh, maybe I'll bring my backpack because there is a tax. And so taxes and bans and regulation are a big part of the replace solution. The other thing one can do much more of is reuse. Reuse plastic that you have used so you're not putting it out into the environment. I mean, many of these plastic bottles would last for a very long time, but they're, for most people, single use. And we have to fix that, and that's about behavior change. It's not because there's any harm in reusing, it's just we don't. And then recycling is a huge part of the solution as well. If you could actually turn recycled plastic around where it isn't going out into the environment, then at least until we have proper substitutes across all household and other products, that's an important part of the short-term solution. But as an ambition, given the harms associated with plastic pollution, I think to set a goal of where you want to get that is very ambitious, like the TED Talk you saw, I think that can be a very important part. But for some people, when you set such an ambitious goal, it actually has the perverse effect of making them want to watch television and not be part of addressing plastic, the challenge of plastic. So maybe now we could take like three comments or questions from people, just to, because I know they're conscious of time. Is that possible?
So I think about two. Yeah.
Two?
Okay.
Oh, but I won't answer them. If we could just maybe hear from whoever has their hand up, we can hear from them, and then I will respond.
Okay,
If that's okay?
that's
Just in case there's more. I'd love to hear from people.
So, okay, it's maybe you.
And there's one in the back, too.
Oh, and one at the back. So, please.
Yeah, both.
Yeah, it's going to be like two of the boys.
So, hello everyone. First word I want to say, I really appreciate your trip here to Vietnam and share with us very, very valuable and interesting information. A bit about myself. My name is Nguyễn Định Trí. I'm a mechatronic engineering student, and recently I've been environmentally concerned because climate change now is visible, and especially the flood in Con Th City right here, the height of the flood, the seasonal flooding is increased every year and becoming more and more irregular. So I'm environmentally concerned, and I really want to know that is there any political way to nudge people to fight climate change? Because Vietnamese people, as I think, are facilitated to, let's say, littering. Because when we throw something on the street, there'll be someone going to collect them afterward. And so that we are facilitated to do that. And so I think there must be some laws or somehow to stop people from doing such a practice. And I also want to ask that what is the approach that the US government is implementing right now towards that problem? Thank you.
And then, please.
Hello. Good morning, Ms. Power. First of all, I would like to say that it's been an incredible experience having you here with us today. And I love your take on how we should take small steps towards our goal, however small or big it is. And so my question is, what can a typical student should do to get started, and who should we look for guidance in our efforts?
Thank you. And maybe one more? I think this...
Dạ, đầu tiên em xin phép được nói chuyện bằng tiếng Việt ạ. Dạ. Dạ. Đầu tiên em xin gửi lời chào đến bà Samantha và quý thầy cô có mặt và các bạn có mặt ngày hội trường ngày hôm nay. Thì em có một câu hỏi về việc trao quyền dành cho thanh niên để giảm thiểu biến đổi khí hậu. Thì như em là sinh viên của trường này, sinh viên của khoa môi trường của trường Đại học Cần Thơ, thì em nhận thức rõ được cái vấn đề là ảnh hưởng của biến đổi khí hậu đến người dân. Thì nhưng mà đôi khi sinh viên chúng em thiếu đi những cái cơ hội để cùng hành động để giảm thiểu biến đổi khí hậu. Thì theo bà, em có một câu hỏi là tầm quan trọng của sinh viên trong cái việc mà giảm thiểu biến đổi khí hậu, và cái cơ hội nào dành cho sinh viên và thanh niên trẻ để cùng nhau giảm thiểu biến đổi khí hậu. Anh xin hết.
Well, in many ways, the three questions are, I think, very, very interrelated. So I'll try to sort of weave together responses to each of them. I mean, so, you know, I think there is, especially in societies where the politicians are on the older side, the people that one sees in leadership roles are often on the older side. There's, you know, a tendency when you're young to think, well, they make the decisions and we go to class, you know, and we learn, and one day we will be leaders. But as I was saying earlier, you are leaders now, and so even as students, you have the opportunities, you know, in the first instance, right, to choose your area of academic focus in a manner where you think that what you learn will actually help you make some small or eventually some big change, you know. So there's a way, you know, of course there's your basic course requirements that you have to do, but learning doesn't only occur in a classroom, right? Learning, we heard about a YouTube video about zero plastic use. There are documentaries, there are online learning opportunities. I teach at Harvard University in the United States when I'm not in the government. I teach at Harvard Law School and at the Kennedy School of Government. We have begun to put a lot of our curriculum online for free globally. Harvard X, it's called. And those kinds of opportunities are, I think, are more and more available, because even though knowledge is not the only aspect of what you will bring to your work to improve the world, it is a critical foundation. I always, when young people ask me, like, you know, do you have any advice? I say something very simple, which is know something about something. You know, just, and don't be afraid to specialize on one thing. You know, just because you specialize on one thing doesn't mean you won't work someday on some other thing. You know, I think now the economy is changing so much. People are having really different careers. Young people like you won't be like your parents or your grandparents where they did one thing. I mean, even your mother is now doing something entirely different. But so don't feel as if by going really deep on something that you are losing the opportunity to do something else. It may just be that you are postponing focus on something else. So recognize that you have the chance to build. There's nothing like a university experience, because you don't have to worry in the same way that you will about taking care of your kids or your family. You get to focus on just making yourself more prepared to make a difference. And so really think about what you're learning while you're in this, you know, privileged setting with such wonderful faculty and leadership. I think also the network, you know, other students, as we've heard just in this discussion, they know so many things, they have so many ideas, they have some similar fears and frustrations. And finding ways to organize and to learn from one another and share ideas. Some great startups have come out of university collaborations. Look at Bill Gates and what he did while at Harvard University. Although he dropped out, so I think your parents wouldn't want you to drop out. So even if you have a great collaboration, you can continue your university. So I think that can help. And then, I think there is a question which is, about how to relate to public policy. So how to be citizens. I think, again, this idea that there are politicians here and young people here, in an era of climate change, that doesn't really make as much sense anymore, right? The leaders need to hear your perspectives on what is going to be valuable. So finding a way, through party channels or through maybe engagements that the university can facilitate with local officials to convey your ideas, your perspectives, I think that can help as well. And then to the, what was the first question, I think that you put your finger on, a couple of the different dimensions of the solution. So behavioral change is going to be key. And it isn't just about, do I recycle, or do I, how much electricity do I use, or, one day do I maybe go electric as electric cars become, cheaper and more available here, or electric scooters, which I hope are coming online more and more. All of that is incredibly important. But there does need to be a governmental side of this as well, which is about regulation, which you pointed to, which is about going beyond a nudge and going beyond behavioral change and encouraging of behavioral change to something else. And, again, regulation can be about incentives. You can get a tax break if you go green, or if the national government in a country wants to encourage a green economy or an even faster transition to net zero than 2050, which is your national goal, it can create incentives for the different provinces and say, well, here are some funds. Provincial officials, you can get access to these funds if you show us a plan for how you're going to help transition to solar faster, or you can get access to these funds if you show us a plan for how you're actually going to help farmers adapt. The other thing that is going to need to happen, I gather, in the Mekong, I'm learning a lot in my time here, is, some of the practices like, dams and dikes and other practices or things that people have done, not only upstream, which we all know is a major, major issue, that other countries have done that affect you, but also things even that people have done here. I was on the Mekong and I saw, we talked about salination, I saw the salt mining that is going on, and the barges that are going through. And I was encouraged to hear that fewer barges are going through now, but that's something that's going to affect. There's the sea level is rising, but it's also that the Mekong is sinking because you're actually seeing sand removed and being put into concrete. Well, that is going to require regulation, but it's also going to require citizen vigilance to make sure that nobody is doing something in a manner that is hurtful, for the environment. So we have an expression: if you see something, say something. To just even have that conversation about things that each individual and each businessman and woman can do that will make things better, or that they can stop doing, that they have gotten used to doing, but that if they could stop doing it, it would make things better. And the last thing I'll say is just I'll share one conversation from yesterday that I had in Ho Chi Minh City, where a very senior official from the environmental ministry was kind enough to come to the event that I had with the waste collectors who were picking up the recycling that I mentioned earlier. And he is somebody who's been tasked by the government to help them implement a plan where more people recycle. And that will lower emissions and, again, reduce pollution. So that's, again, not going to solve the whole problem by any means, but it would be very important if that happened. And I asked him, do you recycle? and he kind of smiled and said, no, I don't recycle, but I'm in charge of helping people recycle. And I kind of, asked him a little bit more about that. And you could tell he was so pleased that I think it's in 1 year's time, the law will kick in where everybody has to recycle, that it will be mandated and it won't be up to each individual to decide what they do. And so sometimes to solve what we call a collective action problem, you do need a rule. You need something that every official can know, okay, this is the rule now, and I need to be in compliance with the rule, and then I need to communicate to citizens so that they know about the new rules. And this is the last thing I say just about this communication is such a huge part of behavior change. And it's such a huge part of creating motivation as well. And the one thing I know 100% is that you all are way better at communicating than my generation is at communicating. You know how to reach people because you are doing it every time without even thinking about it. And also the vast majority of the population, of course, is young. And so reaching other young people is something you are going to know how to do in a way that people who are my age or older are just not going to know how to do. And so that's why you are leaders now. You are generators of ideas that can matter in generating both the rules and the behavior change now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samantha. So I'm going to invite Dr. Dre to end our project now. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Power. The conversation was very, very informative and I hope it's very useful for all the audiences here. Given the limited time, so I'm sorry that we must stop the session here. And we really hope that you will come back and to support us in future. I think it's time for us to have a photo section, right? It's time to have some good memory of Cần Thơ University. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you all.